Hey, this Ramon channel is Alpha 4. I'd like to say welcome to my channel. This is a response to, I believe his name is Dallas Wade. He commented on one of my older videos and asked me to respond to some Christian questions. I'm aware I haven't done this in a while, but I wanted to give him a fair shot anyway. First, I'd like to say that I don't think these are the right questions. These questions are distractions that betray an implicit agenda and a feigned naivete on the part of the questioner. I haven't seen his channel, I don't know what his content's like, but at least the questions on their own come off that way. But as I can be a bit of an asshole and a bit of a jerk, I did run these questions by someone of a different belief system than my own, without any of my biases, and with a completely different personality than myself. And he too took these questions as being passive-aggressive. But unlike me, he got offended and gave very different answers than the ones I'm about to give. So these are going to be 10 questions. Question number 1. When did you become a Christian? So this one is complicated to answer, as the whole wording means something different to different people. For some, it will be when they declared they were saved in a congregation, or when they were baptized. There's a whole lot of different meanings for what it means to be a Christian and what it means to truly belong to the church. That being said, the easy answer is that I was baptized Catholic. That is, I was baptized as a Christian when I was a baby. The longer answer is that I am still in the process of becoming. I did not get my confirmation, for instance. That is, I did not choose to make a public declaration of being a follower of Christ until my early 30s. And in a video that I actually had planned to make today instead of this one, I was going to talk about how my beliefs have changed since I started reading the Church Fathers, and how my faith has evolved during these last 3 years alone. In fact, that was going to be this whole point of the video I was going to make right now, until I got this, I guess I could say I got this challenge. Question number 2. What convinced you that the Bible is true? Again, here I'm going to have kind of a more nuanced answer than maybe you might want to hear from someone. It depends what you mean by true, or by the word convinced. I would say I trusted the Bible before I believed it, and that I believed it before I understood how and in which ways it is true. If by convinced you mean introduced, then I would have to give the classic Catholic answer, because the church told me so. But if by convinced you mean that I thought it was factual or sound or valid in a metaphysical and philosophical sense, then I came to that conclusion through my own reasoning and by the grace of God. That is, the Holy Spirit told me it was true. For an atheist, I'm pretty sure that last part's a little hard for you to swallow. But if by convinced you simply mean correct, that it is reasonable, utilitarian, and practical, then I simply came to that conclusion by living my life, and by living a very full life, and seeing my friends and family live full lives. It is the result of living out the ethics, principles, and maxims of the Bible, and also of the times when I did not live out those maxims. That is, by following the wisdom, the philosophy of the Bible, I was able to live my life well. Whereas when I didn't follow those maxims and principles, my life was a mess. And this is true for many of my friends. When I have gone against the Bible's advice, my life has fallen apart. But when I have followed the commandments and heeded the lessons and advice in the Bible, my life has gone better. And I can endure and thrive more fully and peacefully when I follow the lessons of the Bible. That being said, enduring suffering peacefully is not something that a younger me would have understood. Hence, I say, again, being a Christian, as I already implied, is both a state of being and a process. And it's a process that doesn't end until you get to heaven. So you can still reject God up until the end. You can still accept God up until the end. So you're still in the process of becoming as long as you're alive. Question number 3. Were you raised by Christians? Sort of. I would say yes. I mean, they're both baptized Catholics. But to get into the nitty-gritty, it's a little more complicated. I should say that I went to church every Sunday from the age of 6 to 12, without question. My mother was Catholic, but she participated in non-denominational Bible study, and unfortunately she died before she could teach me the faith. And my father was more interested in ancient mysteries, popular conspiracies, and aliens than religion. Actually, it wasn't until I was 15 that my father found devotion. For myself, on the other hand, from the ages of 12 to 25, I was an anarchist, a feminist, and a deconstructionist. While I always believed in God, before the age of 15, I was more interested in ghost and magic than I was in theology or biblical text. I read Plato, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, the Tao Te Ching, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Witch's Bible, the Witch's Magical Handbook, and even the Satanic Bible, long before I read the Bible, the actual Bible, with any significant depth. And to ask who I was raised by, the more blunt answer is I was raised by TV. I was a latchkey kid. My father worked very hard, and so I spent most of my time at home by myself watching TV. So the next question, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you think being raised by Christians contributed to you becoming a Christian? If I was going to find a connection, I would say that I am grateful for my mother insisting that I was baptized when I was a baby. For when I went back to the faith and the church, it was because I was having trouble with Paul. Reading through the Bible for the second time, I was having trouble reconciling his perceived misogyny and his complicated relationship to Peter with the teachings of Jesus and my personal understanding of the faith at that time. And I chose to go to a church to ask about my misgivings, and the receptionist was a woman named Tony. Well, this woman just happened to have been in that same Bible study with my mother 30 years earlier. And she remembered my mother. And after some talking, it turns out she remembered a lot of stories about me and my childhood nickname. And she recommended that I take her husband's catechumen class. And I did. But let's look at a different situation. Let's look at my wife for an example. My wife is an atheist, and her mother is a Buddhist. And my wife married me, a Catholic. So I don't think the connections are there as strongly as you think they are. I know a lot of people whose parents might have been one religion and they became another. That connection isn't as tight as you think it is. The next question, is it possible for someone to believe that they have a real relationship with God when they, in fact, do not? Yes. People can be delusional, psychotic, or even just insane. Let alone they can make mistakes, be fooled, be misled, or they can just be plain wrong. The next question that you ask is, and if so, how do you know that your relationship with God is in fact real? And the answer is simple. The answer is faith. So question number 5. There are many denominations and types of Christianity. And even within them, and even within those divisions, there are subdivisions, competing theologies and different rites. How confident are you that your denomination, religion, or faith is the correct one? Well, I'm Catholic, so I have tradition, the church, the magisterium, and the Pope to look to for confidence. Pun both intended and unintended. But even if you want to look at the mortal nature of the authorities I put forward and look at them in a way that points out their own hypocrisies in an attempt to sow doubt in the mind of the believer, for me, that's not going to work. A, because I understand they're human, and B, I understand the institution is made up of humans, and the church is made up of humans, and humans are flawed. We have a thing called original sin. But more than that, I have the doctors of the faith and the church fathers, aka the Apostolic fathers, to turn to. And if their own relation and writings as relates to heresy bother you, the reader or listener, and bothers your modern sensibilities when you hear some of their antiquated, let's call it misogyny or patriarchal ideas, well, then I have the apostles. And if you don't like the apostles, well, of course, I have Jesus. And if you, the atheist, want to doubt his very historical nature, well, then I have the Jewish histories and rabbinic writings, all of which are extra biblical. I have many, many resources before I need to pull the cliche Christian card of "but the Bible says." I don't know if you can see. No, you can't. It's this one right here. I have a whole row right here of Jewish histories, Maimonides. I have the Shemesh. I have the Midrash, the Midrash, the Talmud. I have the I think I have something Kabbalah there as well. I have the Zohar. I have Josephus. So I can get to monotheistic thinking without the Bible and without the New Testament. I can also get there through the church fathers, which are also extra biblical. I can get there plenty of ways. Also, I am a Catholic, and as a Catholic, I have classical Western philosophy. I can go to Plato, Aristotle, Epictetus, and so many others to get to the same moral and ethical conclusions. Now, you might not like that, but that's the answer. And a lot of Protestants don't like that answer, but that's the truth. The next part of this question is, how confident are you that your personal interpretation of the Bible, especially concerning its doctrine and its theology, is the correct interpretation? And as a Catholic, I get to say I rely on the consensus of tradition, the church fathers, the doctors of the faith, the magisterium, and the Catholic Church and her dogma and doctrine. And that's not a cop-out answer, even if you want to think it is. Because I did a lot of reading and research on my own, years of hard work and study, hunting down rare and obscure texts and translations and manuscripts, histories and philosophies. I spent so much money, so much time of my life. Instead of pursuing a degree in this, I was doing it for my own personal understanding. I did all that work and spent all that money and took all that time just to find out I'd come to the same conclusions on my own as the Catholic Church had already done. Same conclusions, time and time again on almost every issue or question. The same conclusion had already been come to by the Catholic Church. So at some point, I had to just admit that the Church was correct. That point, by the way, was somewhere in the midst of reading Augustine and Eusebius and John Chrysostom. More so the daily readings, or what you call it, Divine Office, or the Liturgy of the Hours, whatever you want to call it. Doing that is where I really found that everything, all my ideas and intuitions and conclusions had already been reached by someone else. So instead of fighting it, I can just go to the Catechism, or go to I have some records of Vatican II, or go to something else. I can just go to the Catholic Church. I can see what they said, and then from there, look at research and look at stuff from there, instead of doing it the other way, which was the hard way, which is do all the research just to come to the same conclusion that they already had found. Anyway, most of the Catholics do that. Sometimes they don't, but most Catholic books do record both sides of the argument in their sources and in their notes. Really good notes lead to really good theology. I'll say that much. And good clarity. Number 6. The Protestant canon, Catholic canon, and Orthodox canon of the Bible each contain a different amount of books. It is said that Jesus himself references and quotes from some books that are missing from any of these canons, any of these well-known canons. So how do you determine that the books in your Bible are all inspired by God? Again, I'm Catholic. I trust the magisterium, divine living tradition, and the Catholic Church. And more concretely, we, Catholics, had a meeting. It was a council, in fact. You might have heard of it. We voted on it. We voted on which books were in the Bible and which were not. And if you are asking about the criteria that we used to make this decision, it was very simple and very clear. To be included in the canon, it had to be a text that was, at that time, currently being preached, that is, being read as part of an active liturgy in the churches of the men that attended that council. It had to have a clear tradition behind it. Its use had to date back to the time of the apostles. It could not have been written later than the death of the last living person during the time of Christ, during the time that Christ walked the earth in mortal flesh. Now, my wording might be a little off, but I think you get the point. And if you don't trust my word for it, there's records. These things are chronicled. You can go see the notes from these councils. You can go see them talking about the notes of the previous councils, later councils. You can just go read them, and you can see what the justification was for including these books or not including these books. Really, you can go read the records, and you can see why we included some and why we didn't. It's one of the problems with Protestantism. When you divide yourself away from the Catholic Church and you jump away from its history, you also lose a lot of its justification for the things that it does, because we keep records. You jump away from the records, you no longer have those resources. That's why a lot of Protestants nowadays, even with all the stuff that's going on right now, are returning to Catholicism. Protestantism is a split from Catholicism. And we call it coming back or coming home. A lot of Protestant and Protestant leaders are returning to the Catholic faith for the simple fact that once they read the Apostolic Fathers and find out the justifications and read the records, they say, oops, turns out Christianity was Catholic the whole time. Or that Catholic was Christian the whole time. Either way, once they get there, they're there, and then they join. More interestingly, though, he then asks, and how do you determine that the hundreds of books that are not in your Bible were not inspired by God? Now, before I give the answer that I wrote down, let me say this. I actually own all the books that were rejected by the Bible, that were rejected from the Bible. I own most of them that still exist, put it that way. I don't just have the Gnostic and the Pseudepigrapha and all of that. I also have the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I also have some Zoroastrian texts, and I plan on getting more Zoroastrian texts. I have a lot of source books for Greek mythology and for Greek religion, because mythology wasn't just mythology, it was also part of a living religion at one time, and that had a theology to it. So, you can just read it. Just read it. Read the Gnostic text. Not only is it written way after the time that Jesus had lived, not only is the theology completely different than what's in the Bible, but the information and everything is very anachronistic. There's a lot of mistakes. There's things that just don't make sense. There's ideas from different cultures that are not part of the cultures that were incubating at the time that Jesus came on the scene. So yeah, you can really see that it's not related to anything that's in the Bible. The Bible has a very Jewish, Christianity, the New Testament, has a very Jewish feel because it springs out of Judaism. And so when you see things that are springing out of different traditions that are not Judaism, different religions, different philosophies, you can see very clearly they're late additions, they don't sound the same, the stories don't have the same meaning, the characters aren't the same, people aren't acting the same way, you can just see it doesn't fit. It's just like reading a fan fiction versus something written by the author. 90% of the time, you can just tell it's not the same person writing. Surprising to most people is that the Catholic canon is not actually closed. As the Catholic and Orthodox faiths are part of the same religion, we actually respect each other's canons and hope to reunite them one day when the schism is ended and over. So we actually left room for a larger canon to be included. What we did when we had this meeting is we said which books were definitely inspired, and then we listed a few books that were definitely not inspired. But we never said that no other books could have been inspired. Just interesting little side note. A lot of people don't know that. There you go. So it's actually only certain Protestants of a very particular set that believe that it's actually a closed canon. Continuing on. Okay. Question number 7. Many times the Bible refers to the earth as being flat, the sun as orbiting the earth, and the sky as being a dome, as well as the earth sitting on pillars and being stationary. Many Christians typically don't think that the Bible is being completely literal in most of these instances. So, do you believe that the creation story in Genesis is being literal or metaphorical? A lot of the stuff that he says there is poetry, and in the prophetic poetry, I mean, it's prophetic poetry. I mean, I don't even know how you expect that to be literal. But symbolism aside, what do I think about the creation story in Genesis? I think it is being as literal as the understanding of the people who wrote, received, and developed it would allow them to be. But it's important to remember that this was and is a polemic. The creation story and most of Genesis is precisely polemic. It is taking the well-known, accepted facts of the day, the beliefs of the cultures that surrounded the Semitic and Hebrew people of that time, and turning those beliefs and myths on their ear. Polemics is what a lot of atheists try to do very poorly. You want to see really good polemics, go watch David Wood as he goes into Islam. He is a master of polemics. Anyway, continuing on. The next question he asks is, do you believe that it is a literal account of the creation of the universe? I believe it is the truth. Its premises and conclusions are correct. The scientific anachronisms matter little to its moral relevance. If you're going to tell me it's okay to lie because a boy in blue didn't really yell wolf too many times, or that I shouldn't use brick over straw to build my house, to build my home, because a wolf never blew down the house of a pig, I think you're missing the point of the story. Man, you gave way too many questions. This video is going to be way too long, man. His next question, and if so, how do you determine that the Bible is being literal in this particular instance, but not in other examples? Well, common sense and intuition is a good starting point, but you can always go to the church fathers, that is the disciples of the founders of the original 35 churches, approximately. They explain in explicit terms what their teachers, that's the people who actually wrote the Bible, meant when they wrote it. After all, the Bible is a Catholic book. Question number 8. In your opinion, what are the 3 best proofs that the Bible is true? My life, my experiences, and the life and experiences of those that I know. If you can read the Bible and not relate to a single character, or you cannot see a situation you have been in before related back to you accurately, then you haven't lived enough life to judge the truth or accuracy of anything. But here's a hint. The books that say poetry are probably poetry and not literal. The books that are labeled literature are probably dramatic and not 100% literal. And the books that are prophetic are probably going to contain symbolism, and that symbolic nature is probably not going to be intended literally or to be interpreted as literal. In fact, the only books with strong literal content are probably the ones that tradition has labeled history. And if you want to go into the New Testament, it would be the biographies, that is, the lives or the Gospels, the epistles as well. And as such, they have the same accuracy as any other historical work written from around the same period of time and area and location that these were written? See, we grouped the books and gave those groupings labels to help with this very question. This is too long, man. Question number 9. Is it better? Question number 9. Is it better to silence the critics avoid listening to criticism, engage with critics, or refute criticism and the critics? I had to clean up a little bit of the wording there because he limited the options and conflated too much. And I'm going to say none of these are better or worse on their own. It depends on who is doing the critiquing and as well as who is doing the refuting. A poor refutation can lead to error and heresy, causing more damage to the faith than a fair criticism. On the other hand, an incendiary, slanderous attack can cause real deaths and destruction of property, as we see right now with what is going on with the churches and riots all over the world. He then asks, which of these options do you find to be the approach that most Christians should take? And for me, that is, speak for yourself and don't speak for the church. Listen, read a lot, think a lot, meditate as much as you can, and study. And then, if someone asks you a question or presents you with a criticism, you can send them to a source for them to look it up for themselves. Number 10, and lastly, are you open to the possibility that your beliefs might be wrong? I am not infallible, and I am wrong about things all the time. But I have never and will never doubt the existence of God. The Bible has very little to do with that. Okay, that was too long. Hopefully I can edit this down. Dallas, I hope you appreciate these answers. I hope you actually reply either on your channel or on comment under mine or something. I welcome it. I welcome having a conversation. I welcome you to come to my channel and talk. Very few days off nowadays, man. But if you can find me on a day when I'm free, I'll gladly have a conversation with you. Honestly, I don't think there's other right questions. I was actually going to do a whole thing at the end of this before I wrote out the questions where I was going to ask you questions. All right, here's what I was going to ask you. Why are you asking these questions? Are you asking because you actually want to know? Are you asking because you're trying to convince the Christian of something? Who's your audience here? Is your audience the atheist? Or is your audience the Christians? Are you trying to get the Christians to open up their minds? Are you trying to entertain the atheists? Are you trying to get the atheists to laugh at the Christians? What exactly is your point in doing these type of questions? As I said in one of my comments to you, this stuff has been covered a lot. I mean, AIU, dude, come on. Back in the day. Thunderfoot stuff, I don't even want to say Amazing Atheist, because, some people have destroyed their careers, I know. But, you know, there is much more interesting stuff being done in the Christian apologetic realm, in the atheist realm, than there was going on 5 or 10 years ago. The stuff that Cosmic Skeptic and Apologia is doing, even though I don't really enjoy Apologia's channel, I really respect what he's doing. It's really good stuff. I just don't enjoy it. I really like what Matt from the 10-Minute Bible Hour is doing. Oof, I mean, that's some really good stuff, man. You know, when I switched my channel from a martial arts channel to a religious topic channel, I was worried about, you know, shadow banning and all this other stuff, and I was trying to build a new audience. And I was like one of the only Catholics doing debates with atheists. There was not a lot of atheist-Catholic interaction. Well, now we have Lizzie Answers, and we have Trent Horn, and Jimmy Akin's still not really doing debates, but, you know, we got more Catholics who are engaging in this kind of stuff. There's Matt Fradd and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, you got Catholics who much more popular channels than mine already doing this kind of work. Hence, I'm thinking of shuttering this channel and just going to comics and martial arts or just going to pure philosophy. But man, I'd love to talk to you in person. I'd love to have a real conversation with you. I'd love to get your feel. I'd love to see where you're at. I'm married to an atheist. One of my best friends is agnostic. My views on things are very open-minded. So yeah, no, I'd love to talk to you. I have a very long background in history and Greek mythology and mythology in general. I've read a whole lot of stuff in Mesopotamia, man. I'd love to have those conversations with you, but I mean, I don't know how established your channel is. You might be way too big to talk to someone like me. But like I said, I haven't watched your channel. I don't know what your approach is, but just going by the by your thumbnails, it doesn't seem like your channel is too friendly to Christians or to believers. But who knows? Peace, like, and subscribe. Anyone watching, have a great day. Love you all. Bye.